I believe it's important that you know the things that can be done to you so that when you see them happening, you recognize them and you get out. Can false memories be implanted in your brain? Yes, they can. According to UC Irvine, the psychology department, 70% of people can have false memories easily implanted. According to the National Library of Medicine, a total of 30 primary studies analyzing the probability of implanting rich autobiographical false memories were retrieved. The results revealed a significant positive generalizable 80% credibility value for the implanting of false memory. That's right, folks. Somewhere between 7 and 8 out of 10 people can easily have false memories implanted in their brain. Stick around and I will tell you exactly how to do it. First things first, there's a difference between a false belief and a false memory. A false belief is, I think this thing happened. A false memory is, I remember this thing happened. And they're both coded into your brain primarily the same way. But today we're talking about false memories. There are two kinds, and I'm not going to go into the high pressure one today. That's the one that we use when you're doing an interrogation and you're looking to get a false confession. If you have interest in knowing what that procedure is, throw it in the comment section. Maybe I'll do another video on that. This is more about the standardized lower pressure method. As with many other types of mind control, this must be done to the right person. They've got to be a person that has what's called an external locus of control. If you don't know what that means, each one of us has either an internal or an external locus of control. And what that means is if you have an internal locus of control, like me, then you are the person that makes things happen. You don't wait for things to happen, you make things happen. You happen to the world. A person with an external locus of control, they don't make things happen. Everything happens to them. The world happens to them. This is the person that will be an ideal candidate for this type of memory installation. The next thing to look at is to make sure that they see you, as with all mind control, as an authority figure. Everyone has an authority bias, meaning that there's certain things that people can wear or present themselves with that make us immediately see them as someone who is in charge of the situation. If the blue lights come on behind you when you are driving down the road, you know to pull over, and the person that comes up and writes you a ticket has the authority to do so. If you walk into an office where you're looking for medical attention, if someone has a stethoscope and a badge and a white lab coat, you immediately assume they know what they're talking about and they are the authority. So you bring the person in and you say, listen, we've found out a few things that happened several years ago. And part of that has to do with the fact that you were in contact with the police. And this can be anything that you decide to make up, from stealing something or being in an accident that they drove away from, or some kind of a fraud thing that maybe they didn't realize was happening. Anything and any flavor fits in here as long as it's plausible that this person may have been involved with something like that. Then you ask them, what do you remember about this? Now let me hit the pause button. They're not going to remember anything about this because you're making it up. So what you do is you give them another scenario. And the first one is one that you have figured out by doing research, usually on social media. You can find something that they were involved with a few years ago. And let's say that they were involved with maybe a horse riding accident or a skiing accident or some type of an accident like this when they were doing things that they enjoyed. You would then bring this up and say the same thing. You would say, well, this happened around the same time as something else that was happening with your life. Apparently, you were involved in some sort of an accident about 3 or 4 years ago. And this will trigger real memory with them. And they will say, yes, I do remember that. That was a terrible time in my life. And after they've answered that with an affirmative, you spend a good 15 minutes asking them questions about that incident. You are building rapport. You can say things like, I can't believe that happened. What were you doing to make this particular thing happen to you? And people will gladly talk about themselves, especially in an instance where they had some sort of a trauma several years ago. After about 15 or 20 minutes of this rapport, they're used to you knowing what you're talking about. That's when you come back to the first question that you asked. And you say something like, well, around the same time is when we found out that you had this issue with the police. And then ask them, do you remember anything about this? And when they say no, you say, well, that's funny because we actually have a very detailed police report that tells us everything about it. And all you have to do is remember. And this is where you're beginning to use what's called the illusion of transparency. And this is where you make the other person feel as though they know what's going on when they really don't. And you are moving around neurons in their brain and connecting them together in a way that they didn't expect, because our brain is programmed to take facts from the past and rearrange them creatively to solve problems that are happening in the present. And then you say, if you would like to, we can do a memory retrieval technique. It's called a recall exercise. And then you say something like, we don't really like to use the word repression, but sometimes we do hide away memories that we're uncomfortable with. And at this point, you're using words that people know and you're triggering mechanisms that they're comfortable with. And the interesting thing is, they actually at this point will say, well, maybe I did repress something. And almost every single person that I've been involved with in an interrogation that this happens to, they say, well, yeah, I'll try that. And technically they can say, no, I don't want to do that. But they almost always say yes. And then you have them close their eyes and you get them to relax a little bit. And remember, you've built this rapport with them for the last 20, 30 minutes where they agree with everything that you've said. And as their eyes are closed and they're beginning to relax, you start asking them, I want you to think really hard about the time frame when this one accident happened. And do you have any recall of any type of a run-in with the police? And about this time is where you'll be shocked when they say something like, you know what, I do remember something about a police officer and something about being contacted by them. And as soon as they give you even the smallest piece of information, you give them what's called social reinforcement. You say, yes, that's exactly right. That's what we have written down in this report. And then little by little, their brain will take existing memories and reformat them. And as this continues, they remember more and more details and they get more specific. They even bring up people they think were with them. And all the time you're encouraging them, saying, yes, that's right. Those details had to come from something from their past because you're not creating them. They're retrieving them from somewhere. And what they're retrieving are real people, real memories, and real things that happened. But now because of the pressure they've been put under, their brain will weave them together into a story that never happened. So about 35 to 45 minutes in, between 70 and 80% of people are confessing to a crime that never happened. If you're interested in finding out more about how the FBI and the CIA and even the police department will use high-pressure techniques to get false confessions that are way worse than the one I just showed you, throw it in the comment section. I'll be happy to go through that with you as well. I believe it's important that you know the things that could be done to you so that when you see them happening, you recognize them and you get out.